The smell of roasted turkey, cinnamon pies, and mulled wine filled the air. But beneath that festive warmth, I felt a tightness in my chest that no holiday cheer could soften. Christmas dinner had always been sacred in our family, a moment when no matter how busy life became, everyone returned to my table. I had polished the oak dining table my late husband built decades ago, set it with the fine china I only used on special occasions, and laid out embroidered napkins that I had ironed earlier that morning. Every detail was meant to carry a sense of tradition, of continuity, of love. The candles flickered, casting golden light over faces I had known since they were children. My daughter Anna sat at the head of the table. She insisted it would be symbolic of her taking more responsibility in the family. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. Her husband, Mark, sat beside her, wearing the smug smile that never seemed to leave his face. My younger son, Daniel, sat quietly near me, his eyes darting nervously from one sibling to the other. The rest of the chairs were filled with cousins, aunts, and a few neighbors who had become like family over the years. I should have felt joy at seeing the table full, but I couldn't shake the unease. Anna had been strangely distant the past few weeks, her tone sharp, her calls rare. Something about her energy tonight put me on edge. Halfway through dinner, when conversation should have been about gifts and New Year's plans, Anna rose to her feet. She clinked her wine glass with her fork, the high-pitched ring slicing through the chatter. The room quieted immediately. She cleared her throat, her chin lifted, her eyes scanning the table like she was addressing a boardroom, not her own family. "I'd like to make an announcement," she said. Her voice carried authority, almost rehearsed. Mark leaned back, crossing his arms with the air of someone who already knew what was coming. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. My instincts told me to brace myself. Anna's gaze finally settled on me. "Mom," she began, her smile tight. "We've been talking, and we've made a decision. You are no longer part of this family. You've passed the torch, and it's time for you to let go. From now on, Mark and I will be taking responsibility for the house, the finances, and the family gatherings. Well, you can move into a smaller place where you'll be more comfortable." The words slammed into me harder than any physical blow ever could. My hand trembled, the fork clattering onto my plate. Around the table, jaws dropped. A cousin gasped audibly. My son, Daniel's face turned pale, his lips parting in disbelief. "What are you saying?" I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. Mark jumped in before Anna could answer. "What Anna means is, you've done your part, Margaret. You raised your kids, you kept this house together after your husband passed. But you're getting older, and frankly, this house is too much for you. We've voted as a family, and it's time for a change." I felt my chest tighten, as though invisible hands were pressing down on me. My mind reeled. Voted? I hadn't been consulted. Neither had Daniel, judging by the horror in his eyes. "This isn't about you," Anna added quickly, her tone sweet but condescending. "It's about progress. We need to modernize. We need to move forward. We want to host gatherings in a home that reflects the new generation. And, well, this place feels stuck in the past." She gestured at the walls, the furniture, the photographs that had held my late husband's smile for decades. A murmur spread through the guests. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others avoided my gaze. My throat burned, as if I had swallowed fire. "So, what you're saying," I said slowly, trying to steady my voice, "is that I am no longer welcome in my own home. That this family, my family, has voted me out?" Anna's eyes narrowed. "Mom, don't make it sound so dramatic. We're doing this for you. You can't keep holding on to everything. It's selfish. We're trying to help you transition." Selfish. That word dug deep. How many years had I worked double shifts at the diner after their father died, just to pay for her private school tuition, her piano lessons, her college dorm fees? How many nights had I gone to bed hungry so my children could eat? And now, selfish was the word she chose. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. My gaze flicked to Daniel. He opened his mouth to speak, but Anna silenced him with a glare. "Anna," I said, my voice low but firm. "You are my daughter. I gave you life. Everything you have today started with me. And now you stand here, in this house, on Christmas, and tell me I don't belong?" Mark leaned forward, smirking. "Don't be so sentimental, Margaret. Times change. People move on. This isn't personal. It's practical." The guests exchanged uneasy looks. One of my cousins whispered something to her husband, shaking her head. But no one intervened. The air grew heavy, suffocating. My appetite vanished, replaced by a hollow ache that spread through my chest. I sat back slowly, willing myself not to cry in front of them. Anna, seeing my silence, mistook it for surrender. She raised her glass higher, her voice bright and resolute. "To new beginnings," she declared. Some guests lifted their glasses hesitantly. Others stayed frozen. I didn't move. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the clink of crystal. I stared at my daughter, at the woman she had become. So polished, so confident, so ruthless, and wondered where the little girl I had once rocked to sleep had gone. As the toast ended, I excused myself quietly, my chair scraping the floor. The noise seemed deafening in the silence that followed. My feet carried me down the hallway, away from the laughter, away from the betrayal. And in that moment, one thought seared through my mind, more painful than all the rest. I had given her everything. And now, she had decided I was nothing. By morning, the house looked like a battlefield that had decided to dress itself in tinsel. Glitter in the rug, a cracked ornament under the radiator, napkins wilted beside plates no one finished. I brewed coffee strong enough to bite back and sat with my hands wrapped around the mug, like it was the last warm thing I owned. Anna came in with a legal pad tucked against her chest. Mark followed, carrying a rolled-up blueprint tube like a trophy. Daniel hovered in the doorway, uneasy. "Mom," Anna began, business slick, "I want to talk about a plan that makes sense for everyone." Mark slid the tube onto the table and popped the cap. Out spilled glossy renderings, an open-concept kitchen gleaming with quartz, matte black fixtures, a waterfall island big enough to host a cooking show. Another page showed my dining room stripped of its wainscoting, replaced by a wall of glass that looked out onto a deck no one had asked for. Anna tapped her pen. "The house needs a full modernization. We're talking insulation, roof, electrical, foundation waterproofing. Mark's got a contractor who can start in January." She said it like it was a rescue mission, not a hostile takeover. I looked at the drawings and felt my chest tighten. The oak table where I'd served birthday cakes and report card lasagnas had been erased, replaced by a sleek slab that couldn't remember a single candle. "How much?" I asked. "Depends on finishes," Mark said too quickly. "We could keep it around $250 if we don't go crazy." $250? I asked, deadpan. He laughed like I'd told a joke. 1,000. Daniel let out a low whistle. "With what money?" Anna scowled. "Equity. The house is sitting on it. It's inefficient to leave capital trapped in an asset that isn't producing." "We are not a hedge fund," I said quietly. She leaned forward. "It's 2025, Mom. You're sitting on a gold mine and acting like it's a quilt. The market won't be this good forever." Mark slid a printed estimate across the table. The numbers swam. Permit fees, demo, haul-away, change orders. A neat column called Owner's Contingency that felt like a polite way to say, "Surprises we will bill you for later." And after? I asked. After we renovate, we list, Mark said. Cash out big, roll the proceeds into something smarter. Maybe a modern place in Riverton. Less maintenance, better schools, for when we, you know. He shrugged, letting the word children hang in the air like bait. Where do I go? I said. Anna had another file ready. She pulled out a glossy brochure, a senior apartment complex with staged photos of smiling retirees playing mahjong under fluorescent lights. Independent living, she said, brightening. All on one floor. Shuttle to the grocery store. They do bingo nights. Daniel choked. Bingo? It's not a punishment, Anna snapped. It's sensible. She won't have to shovel, repair gutters, deal with the boiler. I've dealt with all of it, I said. For 30 years. Anna softened her voice into something syrupy. And you've done great. But you're tired, Mom. Look at you. Your hands, your back. You're keeping this place alive by willpower? My hands were lined, sure, and my back had its weather reports. But I could lift a turkey and a grandchild in the same hour, and I wasn't done yet. Mark slid one more paper across the table, blue sticky flags marking signature lines. We drafted a temporary power of attorney. Purely administrative, he said, palms out. So we can move quickly on permits, bank stuff. You know how slow the city can be. I didn't touch it. Who's we? Me and Anna, he said. And the contractor, my buddy Lance. Lance who? Lance from the gym, Mark said, then caught himself. He runs a design build outfit. Great guy. Daniel snorted. The same Lance who tried to sell you crypto at Thanksgiving? Mark's eyes flashed. He doubled his money last year. Until March, Daniel said under his breath. Anna's patience snapped. You don't get to veto everything, she said, turning on him. You don't pay the mortgage. You don't pay property tax. You show up twice a week with laundry and opinions. Daniel flushed. I fixed the fence. I shoveled the walk. I rebuilt the porch stairs when Mark said he'd get to it. Enough, I said. My voice surprised even me, steady, ironed flat. This is not about stairs. It's about why you need my house to fund your lifestyle. Anna blinked. Our future, Mother, not lifestyle. I reached for the estimate again and pointed to a line item I'd circled without meaning to. Media wall, $18,400. Is the TV broken? I asked. Anna bristled. It's an investment in resale value. Buyers want turnkey. Mark nodded vigorously. You'll thank us when you see the comps. Comps, equity, turnkey. My daughter had learned a new language and used it like it could overwrite the old one. The one with birthday songs and Sunday sauce and the dent in the baseboard where Anna had rammed her tricycle at 4. I stood, carried my coffee to the sink, and watched a squirrel make ridiculous leaps along the fence line. Anna, I said, not turning. When your father died, the life insurance barely covered the hospital bills. I worked mornings at the diner and nights at the hotel, and I put away $20 at a time until the boiler man finally stopped calling me kid. This home is not a checking account. It is a promise. Silence stretched. Even the refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. Mark broke it. Okay, he said, palms up again. No sale. We can do a cash-out refi. Leave the title with you, pull a line of credit, fund the reno, bump the value, refinance again. It's just math. It's not just math, Daniel said. You're turning her into a loan. Anna's jaw set. She flipped to a new page of her legal pad. What would you rather we do, Daniel? Let the roof leak? Let the property value sink because Mom's sentimental? You want to inherit a money pit? I don't want to inherit anything, he said. I want Mom to be safe. I want you to stop treating her like a problem to solve and start treating her like the person who raised you. Anna's eyes glistened. For a second, I saw the girl who used to sleep with her goldfish bowl on the nightstand so she could watch bubbles in the dark. Then the stainless steel version returned. "Mom," she said, "we've already put a deposit down on the contractor's January slot. If we lose it, we'll be pushed to spring. Costs will go up." "You put a deposit down?" I turned then. "With what money?" Mark looked at the ceiling. "We put it on a card." "Which card?" Daniel asked, too fast. "Enough," Anna snapped. "This is getting petty. Mom, we love you, but you can't hold us back because you're afraid of change." "I'm not afraid," I said. "I'm careful." She slid the power of attorney back toward me. "Then be smart," she said softly. "Sign. Let us handle it. Transition gracefully. Everyone will say how dignified you were." Dignified, like I was already leaving a stage. I picked up the paper, read the first paragraph, and set it down. "No." Anna swallowed. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," I said, "but it will be my mistake." Mark gathered the renderings with more force than necessary. One slipped free and skated across the floor. Daniel picked it up, glanced at me, and slid it into the recycling bin. I poured another cup of coffee and topped off Daniel's. "There's leftover quiche," I said, because mothers say practical things when the ground shifts. Anna stared at me like she didn't recognize the person across the table. "We can't wait," she said finally, each word clipped. "The bank closes at 3. We're meeting a loan officer at 1:30. If you won't authorize a refi, we'll pursue other options." "What options?" Daniel asked. Anna lifted her chin. "We'll talk to an attorney." She looked at Mark. "Come on." They left in a gust of cold air, the door shuttering behind them. Daniel sank into the chair beside me. "You okay, Ma?" I took a slow sip. The coffee had gone lukewarm. "I'm angry," I said, "but not at what you think." "At what?" "At how little they think of me," I said. "It makes me worry about how little they think of themselves." He nodded, eyes wet. "I've got you," he said. "Whatever you need." I squeezed his hand, then rose, collected the glossy renderings, and slid them into a drawer I rarely used, the one with the warranty cards and takeout menus. I shut it gently, the way you close a lid on something that will need dealing with later. On my phone, a red bubble. Anna's Instagram story, a mood board of manifesting 2026, new home, new chapter, new car, with a looping song I didn't recognize. In the corner, a boomerang of Mark clinking a champagne flute against a contractor's business card. My thumb hovered over the screen, then I locked it and set it face down. They wanted to turn my life into liquidity. They wanted my home to pay for their dreams. Fine. If they wanted to play this as numbers, we could talk numbers. But I wasn't about to be the only one showing my cards. Sarah came in with the kind of hug that makes you realize how stiff you've been standing. She set the grocery bag on the counter and pulled out a thermos, 2 bowls, and the good crackers like she'd promised. We ate leaning against the island, the late afternoon light turning the kitchen a pale gold. For 10 minutes, we talked about ordinary things: Mrs. Patel's wreath 2 doors down, the new mail carrier who refuses to cut across lawns. Ordinary was a kindness. When the soup was gone and the bowls rinsed, Sarah dried her hands and got to it. "I ran into Linda at the pharmacy," she said, lowering her voice though it was just us. "She said Anna was floating ideas." "What kind of ideas?" "Guardianship," Sarah said, like the word tasted bad. "And a power of attorney they need you to sign so they can help." She made it sound like a mercy. I let the sink run a second longer than necessary. Then I turned it off. "I called Susan," I said. 4 o'clock. Sarah smiled, relief and steel mixing in her eyes. "Good. Bring every scrap of paper and take pictures of the house. Date stamped. Not because we'll need them, but because bullies work better in fog. We spent the next 30 minutes doing just that. She opened curtains. I switched on lamps. Sarah narrated the rooms into my phone like a news anchor. Kitchen, contents intact. Dining room, family china present. Living room, mantel with photos, bookcases, nothing boxed. No evidence of move-out. When we reached the hall closet, I found the tin where I keep passports, birth certificates, and the deed. I slipped the folder into my tote. The tin went back on the shelf, behind the sewing kit a burglar would find first. At 3:40, Daniel poked his head in. "Car's warm," he said. He looked at Sarah. "You coming?" "I'll follow," she said. "Easier to park the sedan on Walnut than your battleship." Daniel grinned and kissed my cheek. He has his father's habit of making you feel like you're the one doing him a favor. Susan's office smelled like lemon oil and new paper. No brass scales, no mahogany intimidation. Just a clean table, a glass wall with a view of the courthouse, and a pen that worked the first time you clicked it. Susan met us at the door in a navy sweater and flats that said she could outrun a problem without taking off her shoes. "Let's sit," she said. "Tell me everything, but start with what's on paper." I slid the contractor estimate across. She skimmed, eyebrow flicking at allowances TBD. Then I gave her the glossy brochure for the independent living community, the sticky tabbed power of attorney with its cheery font, and my stack. Deed, will, bank list, a photo of my driver's license because she asked. She made neat piles without dramatics. "Okay," she said. "First, the house. Title is solely in your name?" "Yes." "No recorded life estate to anyone else? No transfer on death deed? No lien you didn't sign?" "No." I hesitated. "There's a small home equity line I took out when the boiler died 7 years ago. I paid it off." She nodded. "Good. We'll pull the title to double-check nothing creative happened. Second, money. Is Anna on any account as owner or co-owner?" "No." "Authorized user on any credit card?" I frowned. "She was on a card in college. I think I removed her. I'll call and confirm." "Do that today," Susan said, jotting it down. "Also call every bank where you've ever had an account and ask who's listed as in case of emergency or trusted contact. Sometimes staff add family to help and then never remove them. We clean those up." She turned to the power of attorney and slid it back with one manicured finger. "This is broad, immediate, and irrevocable without a fight. If you ever sign a POA, and I'm not saying you should, it should be springing, narrowly tailored, and appoint someone you trust after a doctor says you need help. Not your daughter's husband's contractor's timeline." Sarah let out a pleased little hum. "Third," Susan said, "process. Today we'll do 3 things. Update your will, execute a transfer on death deed, or, better, place the house into a revocable living trust with you as sole trustee and beneficiary. Prepare a cease and desist letter to Anna and Mark, instructing them not to hold themselves out as your agents and not to initiate financial transactions in your name, and draft a simple notice to any lender or contractor that there is no authorized agent for renovations." "Can we change the locks?" I asked. "You can and you should," Susan said. "It's your home. If Anna has a key." "She does," I said quietly. "Have a locksmith rekey tonight," Susan said. "Text her after it's done. For safety, I've rekeyed. Call me before you stop by. Keep it polite and archival. If she accuses you of freezing her out, we point to the text." I exhaled. That polite and archival phrase felt like a coat that fit. "What about this business of guardianship?" Sarah asked. "They're bandying it around like a party theme." Susan's mouth quirked. "People love the word until they see the forms. Guardianship requires a court's finding of incapacity. No judge is going to strip a functioning adult of her rights because her daughter wants quartz countertops. She grew serious. But they can make your life miserable trying, so we get ahead. Your primary care doctor writes a letter noting your capacity as of today's date. We put your healthcare proxy and living will in order, naming who you want, not who's loudest. I thought of Daniel salting the steps. I'd like to name my son, I said. For both, with Sarah as alternate, if she'll have me. Sarah nodded, eyes bright. I'll have you, she said. Good, Susan said. We'll tailor the documents so no one can help by accident. And Margaret, this is important, we keep your tone calm. No threats, no scorched earth. Judges and banks respond to steady people with paperwork. I smiled despite myself. Kind and thorough, I said. Exactly. She slid a retainer agreement toward me. Read it. Ask me anything. I read every line, not because I didn't trust her, but because the act reminded my body I was driving. I signed. Susan gathered the pages like a dealer who knows the game and likes your odds. 2 more things, she said. Start a log. Dates, times, who said what. Screenshots of posts where they talk about taking over. And, this is non-legal, start moving the irreplaceable. The letters, the photos. Put scans on a little thumb drive, then put that drive somewhere no one thinks to look. The flower bin, the sock drawer of the guest room, not the freezer. Everybody hides things in the freezer. Sarah scribbled, not the freezer, with unnecessary flourish. We left with a manila envelope, instructions, and a sense that the floor under my feet had decided to be a floor again. Outside, the wind had turned sharp. Daniel pulled the car up and hopped out to open my door like we were going somewhere fancy. How'd it go? He asked. Good, I said. We have a plan. He glanced at the envelope and then at me. What do you need first? Locks, I said. Then tea. At the locksmith, I learned an entire vocabulary of pins and tumblers I hadn't known I'd been missing. Back home, the new keys clicked with a clean, crisp sound. I texted Anna exactly what Susan had suggested. She didn't reply. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. A minute later, Mark posted an Instagram story of a champagne flute and a caption that read, Big moves ahead. I took a screenshot and put my phone down. That night, I made tea and labeled a folder with blue painter's tape. House, legal. Behind it, another, kids, love. The second one got the letters and the photos and the handprints. The first one got copies of everything Susan had given me. I stood in the doorway to the living room and spoke into the dim. I'm not at war, I told the house, and maybe myself. I'm at work. The radiator answered with a soft, approving clank. By morning, the list on my fridge looked like a flight plan. Daniel made eggs while I started with the banks. I put the phone on speaker, opened a fresh page in my log, and wrote the date at the top in block letters. Thank you for calling. This call may be recorded for quality assurance, the rep chirped. Perfect, I said. So am I. I verified my mother's maiden name, a color I'd once swore was my favorite, and the last 4 digits of an account I could recite in my sleep. I need to confirm there are no co-owners on any accounts, I said, steady. And I want to remove any authorized users. There was a pause, keys clicking. I do see an authorized user added in 2013, Anna Miller, the rep said. She was removed in 2018, no current authorized users. Please note that in my file, I said. No authorized users now or going forward. Trusted contact? None listed. Good. Add my friend Sarah Nguyen as a trusted contact. Contact only. No authority. I spelled it twice. She read it back. I took a screenshot of the call summary when it hit my email and dropped it into a folder Daniel had made on the desktop. House Legal, Woe 1 Banks. We went down the list, checking, savings, the defunct store card I hadn't used since coupons still came in newspaper inserts. Where there was nothing to clean, I asked for a note to file. Where there was something to clean, we cleaned it, polite and archival. At the third bank, the rep said, "We show a power of attorney on file from 2019. It's expired, but..." My stomach tightened. "Whose name?" "Daniel Wilson," she said. Daniel raised both hands like a man backing away from a beehive. "For a single transaction after your knee surgery," she added. "Marked completed and inactive." I exhaled. "Leave it inactive," I said. "Note that any future POA must be springing and reviewed by my attorney, Susan Hale, before acceptance." I gave them Susan's info and wrote the time in my log. Between calls, I gathered paper. The kitchen drawer coughed up the contractor estimate and a deposit receipt I hadn't seen. Mark must have left it in a hurry. $2,500 on a card that wasn't mine, to secure January slot, with a handwritten line. NR. Non-refundable. I photographed it, front and back, then slid it into a plastic sleeve. The mail came early. A thin stack, one thick envelope. The thick one was addressed to Anna Miller and Mark Hayes at my address. Important, mortgage counseling notice. I stood still a long beat before I opened it. Inside, notice of default, investment condo, Riverton. Past due, 2 payments. The letter was date-stamped last week. I put it on the table like it was hot. Daniel leaned in, whistled low. "There's your equity problem," he said. I scanned the first page to PDF, then the second, then the envelope with the postmark, and saved them as 2025-12-23 default notice. Riverton. PDF. Daniel nodded approvingly at the file name. "If you ever need a job in IT, we'll make that happen," he said. I texted Anna, clear, dated, kind. "Hi, Anna. I received a notice of default addressed to you and Mark regarding the Riverton condo. It arrived at my address today, photo attached. I've scanned it for your records. Please update your mailing address with the lender so your notices do not come to me." "Mom?" I attached the PDF and a photo of the envelope. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, returned. Her reply, "Please don't snoop through our mail. That's illegal. We have it under control. We'll handle the house separate from this. Stop mixing things. Polite and archival. Understood." I opened it because it was addressed here and looked urgent. I forwarded it and will drop the physical copy at your place today. I will not be authorizing any liens, loans, or construction on my home. Any questions should go through my attorney, Susan Hale, contact attached. Minutes later, Mark texted from a number he'd labeled Mark H., family. "The deposit is already down. Don't make this messy. It's a win-win. You cash out big, we get a family home. Don't let outsiders poison you." I took a screenshot, saved it to Zo2 Communications. Then I replied, "Please direct any renovation or finance inquiries to Susan Hale, Esqueo. I have not authorized any work or financing on my property." Sarah chimed in from the doorway like a Greek chorus. "That's the tone," she said, calm as a surgeon. Next, digital trail. Daniel mirrored my phone to the laptop and showed me how to export entire threads as PDFs. "Courts love PDFs," he said. "They don't love screenshots that look like they were made in the car." We pulled text chains with Anna and Mark back 6 months. The recurring themes were there in black and white. We need to modernize. It's time. Sign the POA so we can help. A week-old voice memo from Anna. "Mom, you're making this hard and we're trying to care for you. Got saved as 2025-12-16 VM Care for You M4A." I typed a transcript and stapled it to the printout. Social media, Anna's Manifesting 2026 board, Mark's Big Moves Ahead. Daniel used a download extension to save the stories before they vanished. In one clip, behind the champagne flute, you could see the contractor's logo on a business card. We screenshotted the logo, then stopped ourselves. We didn't need to play detective. We needed to be accurate. I circled the logo on a printout, wrote "Identifier only, do not contact directly, counsel will," and slid it into the file. I called my primary care doctor. "I need a capacity letter," I said. "Dated today." The receptionist said, "We can do that with a quick telehealth, but Dr. Shaw prefers in-person for formality." I booked the first appointment the next morning. "Bring a photo ID," she said. I circled it on my calendar and added MAO 3 Health to the folder structure. Then the contractor called me. Unknown number, local area code. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a message. "Hi Margaret, this is Lance with Apex Design Build. Anna said you'd be handling payment authorizations going forward. Just calling to confirm scope and key handoff on the 2nd. We're flexible on demo, but we need access. Call me back today so we can stay on schedule." I saved the audio, typed the transcript, then forwarded both to Susan with the subject line: "Unsolicited contractor call. No authorization given." I did not call him back. By lunch, House Legal looked like a small city. Subfolders, dates, names that meant something to us and would mean something to anyone who needed convincing. Judge, banker, cousin, with a loud opinion. I slipped a thumb drive into the flower bin and another into a Ziploc taped to the underside of the hall table drawer, where no one but a bored burglar would ever look. "Not the freezer," I muttered, and Sarah saluted with a cracker. We moved to physical assets. I photographed the jewelry box. Nothing fancy, but sentimental things that like to wander when people are helping. I logged the piano serial number and took a video of the basement, narrating: "Furnace intact, water heater new in 2022, tool bench, 3 paint cans labeled." The video caught the scrape of a small safe behind the paint. I pulled it free and spun the dial. Inside, passports, Peter's watch, the deed copy, and the title to the car. I added a sticky note with the combination and sealed it in an envelope labeled "For Daniel if I'm in the hospital." Not dramatic, just adult. At 2, the doorbell rang. A courier handed me a thick envelope with a cheerful sticker: "From our family to yours." Inside, a marketing kit from the senior complex Anna had pitched. Free scones coupon, a calendar with quotes about embracing new chapters, and a lease application whose first line asked for my monthly liquid assets. I filled nothing. I stapled the whole thing and labeled it "Unsolicited Marketing, Potential Pressure Campaign." At 3, Susan's email chimed. Drafts attached, a revocable living trust with me as trustee and beneficiary, a pour-over will, healthcare proxy naming Daniel as primary and Sarah as alternate, and 2 letters, one to Anna and Mark, one to any lender, contractor, that did exactly what she'd promised. Firm, free of adjectives, thick with verbs. I signed what I could sign at home and set aside what needed witnessing. Then I texted Anna, again polite. "Quick update. Please do not schedule or authorize contractors, appraisers, lenders, or inspectors for my home. If anyone contacts you about my property, please refer them to my attorney. I'll let you know if and when I'm ready to discuss repairs." She wrote back in seconds. "You're making this adversarial. We were trying to include you." I stared at the screen, then typed the truest sentence I had. I am not being adversarial. I am being responsible. I put the phone down and drew a line under the day's entries in my log. Above the line, what they wanted. Below it, what I would allow. "Soup round 2?" Sarah asked. "Please," I said. And while she ladled, I felt something like click. Inside the locks, inside my chest, inside the story. I wasn't hoarding. I wasn't clinging. I was stewarding the life I had built, one PDF at a time. The next morning, December 24th, cold and colorless. The kind of sky that looks like paper before you write on it. I put on my sensible boots and went to see Dr. Shaw. Her waiting room had a puzzle on a side table that someone had abandoned at the sky. I handed my ID to the receptionist, and when called back, answered the capacity questions like I was taking a pop quiz I'd studied for my whole life. What's today's date? December 24th. Who's the president? I answered. Why are you here? Because my daughter thinks quartz counters are a medical emergency. Dr. Shaw laughed, not unkindly, and then turned serious. She tested memory, attention, judgment. If you found a stamped, addressed envelope on the street, what would you do? Drop it in a mailbox, I said. Or hand it to a mail carrier if she's the one who refuses to cut across lawns. When we finished, she typed briskly. I'm documenting that you're oriented and capable of managing your affairs, she said. I'll print and sign a letter for your attorney. She peered over her glasses. And I'm adding a note to your chart. No third-party access without your explicit consent. Thank you, I said, and meant more than good manners can carry. From there, Daniel drove me to Susan's. The conference room had a little dish of mints and pens that actually wrote, Mercies no one tells you you'll need. We signed like people in a movie. One page, then another, then the one with the ribbon, then the one the notary stamped so hard I could feel the seal through the paper. Revocable living trust with Margaret Wilson as sole trustee and beneficiary. Pour over will. Healthcare proxy, Daniel primary, Sarah alternate. HIPAA authorization. Cease and desist to Anna and Mark. Notice to lenders, contractors. Kind and thorough all the way down. Susan slid the copies into a tabbed binder she'd labeled Wilson, Home Trust, and handed me a flash drive. Digital copies are in your secure client portal, she said. But assume every portal someday gets weird. Keep this too. Where do people hide these? I asked. Not the freezer, she said without missing a beat. We couriered the letters certified and emailed them for good measure. Polite subject lines, factual bodies, no adjectives that would make a judge squint. Daniel took a photo of the envelopes in the courier's hand like we were sending a kid off to camp and wanted proof they made it to the bus. By noon, my phone pinged. Not Anna. A group text. Family meeting, 12:26 at Aunt Linda's. Important. Please come with an open heart. Names bubbled in one by one, cousins, an uncle who only emerges for baptisms and drama. Linda added a dove emoji, then typed, We just want what's best for Margaret. I typed my reply and read it aloud to Sarah before I hit send. I'll be there. I'm well, I'm safe, and my affairs are in order. Let's keep this respectful. If anyone wants documents, I'm happy to share them after the meeting. Sarah nodded. Polite and archival, she said. Mark, separately, texted, You're lawyering up against your own kids? Merry Christmas. I recorded the text into the log, then replied, I retained counsel to handle communications about my home. Please direct any housing, financing, or renovation questions to my attorney, Susan Hale. No spark, no kindling. We spent Christmas Eve like people in a snow globe. Contained, a little shaken, intact. Daniel ran out for cinnamon rolls. Sarah insisted on church at 6. I sang the wrong harmony, as always. When the pastor said, Peace on earth, I sent a tiny prayer to my own address. On Christmas morning, I made French toast, because an old note in a box had told me someone once missed it. For a couple of hours, we were just 3 people who knew each other well. Coffee, paper crowns from a crinkly cracker Sarah smuggled in her purse, a gift bag with socks and a book, and a candle that claimed to smell like first snow. The house breathed like it remembered how. Just after noon, the doorbell rang. A delivery, a wire-edged bouquet, white lilies in a glass cube with a card that read, We love you, let us help. A and M. I set it on the porch bench to catch the cold. Inside the card, folded small, A copy of the same power of attorney I'd refused, with fresh sticky tabs, sign here. I slid it into Zyo2 Communications and texted the florist to please remove our address from the sender's account. In the afternoon, Susan called. The letters were delivered, she said. I've already gotten a reply from someone named Lance at Apex, asking if a notarized letter from you could reverse the pause. I responded, there is no pause to reverse because there was never an authorization. He's been instructed not to contact you again. Susan paused. He also attached a non-refundable deposit receipt. We have a copy, I said, and a folder tone for it. Good, she said. One more housekeeping item. I filed the trust transfer deed electronically this morning. The recorder's office will index it next week. Title will reflect the trust. Your rights remain the same. If anyone checks public records, they'll see what we need them to see. After we hung up, I did what Susan had advised. Moved the irreplaceables, letters and photos into a tote, then into the trunk of Sarah's car. The binder into the flower bin, temporarily, until I found a better spot. Copies to the little safe with Peter's watch. The capacity letter from Dr. Shaw slid into ZO03 Health with a sticky note, 12/24, fit to manage affairs. Evening fell early, as it does in December. The house put on its soft noises. I made a list for the 26th like I was packing for a day trip. Binder with tabs. A. Trust. B. Will. C. Healthcare proxy. D. Cease and desist. E. Contractor contact. F. Default notice. Riverton. Printed log of communications. Capacity letter, original plus copy. Spare reading glasses. A pen that works. A sentence I could say when the room got loud. I practiced the sentence in the mirror, not for drama, but for muscle memory. I am capable, I am safe, and my home is not available for leverage. The words felt odd at first, then sturdy, then almost boring, the way seatbelts should feel. At 8 p.m., Linda called. I put her on speaker so Sarah and Daniel could hear. Honey, Linda began, voice sugared and strained. I just want to avoid a scene on Tuesday. Anna is worried. About what? I asked. That you're being manipulated, she said carefully. By outsiders who don't understand family dynamics. By outsiders? Do you mean my attorney? I asked. A pause. She's making this adversarial? She's making it legible, I said. I'm not confused, Linda, and I'm not unkind. But I am done operating on vibes. Linda sighed. I remember when you and Peter moved in. You painted the nursery that spring. I remember too, I said. Tuesday, I'm going to say what I need to say. Then I'm going to eat whatever you put on that beautiful buffet and go home to my own bed. That's the plan. Okay, she said softly. Do you need me to keep it small? Keep it honest, I said. The size will take care of itself. When the house finally slept, I ironed a blouse I could move in, polished the sensible boots, and slid the binder into a canvas tote with a zip. I added a small, ridiculous thing. A tin of peppermints. Not because anyone would need one, but because people behave better when there's a bowl on the table that says, "We're still human." Before I turned out the light, I stood in the hallway and looked down the spine of photos. I won't use you as a sword, I told them, but I'll let you stand behind me. The radiator answered with a single satisfied clink, as if to say, good, that's what we were built for. Aunt Linda's split level smelled like crock-pots and carpet cleaner. She'd lined up folding chairs in the living room like pews and covered the dining table with a plastic runner that made your elbows squeak. A paper sign taped to the coat closet read, "Family meeting" in bubble letters, as if we might forget where we were. I set my tote on a chair by the wall and poured peppermints into a small bowl. A prop, sure, but also a message. We can be civil while we do this. People arrived in clumps, the way families do. Cousin Matt, with his loud laugh and louder sweater. Aunt Jo with a notebook nobody asked for. Two teenagers who didn't look up from their phones. Daniel stood at my shoulder, a quiet post. Sarah came in last, hair pulled back, legal pad in her bag, smile that said, "I will help you hold the line." Anna and Mark made their entrance with the confidence of people who practiced. Anna wore a cream turtleneck, the kind that makes you look unbothered. Mark had a folio under his arm and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks for coming," he said, like he'd planned a fundraiser. "We'll keep this short." "Great," Linda chirped, hands clasped. "Let's gather." She shot me a look that was almost apologetic. I nodded. "Keep it honest," I'd asked. She was trying. We took our seats. Mark stood near the TV, one hand on the mantel as if swearing in. Anna passed out stapled packets, brochures for independent living, a printout titled, "Signs Your Parent Can't Live Alone," and, tucked in the back, the same power of attorney with fresh tabs. There were even little ballpoint pens with a bank logo clipped to the packets. Someone had gone to the branch counter and asked for a handful. Anna cleared her throat. "We're worried," she began. "Mom's been struggling. The house is too much. There was the time with the space heater." "I unplug it when I leave the room," I said, mild. "And the stairs," Mark added. "She could fall." "I installed non-slip treads," Daniel said. "Last winter." Anna pressed on. "It's not just physical. It's the decisions. She's resistant to change and putting herself at risk." She glanced at me, then at the room. "We're not attacking her. We're asking for help. For her sake." Mark lifted the folio. "We've spoken with a contractor. January start. We'll finance the renovation and then refinance or sell. Whatever makes the most sense. We need Mom to sign a narrow power of attorney so we can handle paperwork. It's standard." He held up the POA like a magician about to pull a bird from it. A few heads nodded, the way people nod when they don't know paperwork but recognize confidence. Aunt Jo made a sympathetic noise. "Change is hard," she said to no one in particular. Anna looked around at the faces she'd curated. "We've all seen the house," she said. "We've all heard Mom say she's tired. We're stepping up. But we need family support so she doesn't feel attacked." She took a breath, softened her voice. "Mom, we love you. We want to make this easy." I let silence sit a moment. I could feel Daniel's pulse in the air, fast and hot. I put my hand on his knee. Then I stood, picked up the bowl of peppermints, and walked it down the row like a communion plate. People took one, because hands reach before brains do. The room exhaled. "Thank you for organizing," I said, looking at Linda first, because gratitude opens more doors than glares. I know nobody wants their mashed potatoes with a side of paperwork. A few chuckles. Good. I also know stories grow fast in families, and sometimes they grow in the direction of the person telling them. I set the bowl on the coffee table, took my tote, and pulled out the binder. Tabs, bright as flags. A, B, C, D, E, F. "I'm going to say one sentence," I said, the one I'd practiced. "I am capable, I am safe, and my home is not available for leverage." Cousin Matt let out a low whoo. Aunt Jo wrote it down. Anna's smile trembled. "Mom." I listened. I said gently, "Please return the favor." I opened the binder to see. This is a letter from my doctor dated December 24th, stating I'm fit to manage my affairs. This is my updated healthcare proxy naming Daniel as primary and Sarah as alternate. These are not the actions of someone resistant to change. They are the actions of someone making changes properly. I slid a copy of the capacity letter to Linda, then to Aunt Jo. Paper made its soft, convincing sound. Eyes scanned, heads tilted. Mark shifted. "A," I said, moving the tab. "This is my revocable living trust. The house is in it. I'm the sole trustee and the beneficiary. That means exactly what it sounds like. I control my house. B is my will. D is a letter from my attorney instructing Anna and Mark not to present themselves as my agents. E is a notice to lenders and contractors. I looked at Mark. There will be no January start. He colored. You're over-lawyering? I'm over-documenting, I said, which is what adults do when more than one person wants the same thing. Anna's jaw tightened. Mom, this is humiliating. You didn't have to bring props. Documents, Sarah said pleasantly from the back. They're called documents. Aunt Linda cleared her throat. Anna, honey, let your mother finish. I turned to F and took a measured breath. I didn't plan to bring this, I said, and watched Anna's eyes flicker. But since we're talking about risk and decisions, the mail delivered something to my house this week. I held up the notice of default with the Riverton address visible, but the account number covered. It's a late notice on your investment condo, 2 payments behind. A hush took the oxygen out of the room. Mark reached, but Daniel was already on his feet, not to snatch, just to stand. Mom, Anna said, voice thin. That's private. It came to my address, I said, calm. I forwarded it to you, as you saw. I've also told the lender to remove my address. I am not your mailing hub, and my home is not your liquidity plan. Aunt Jo's pen paused mid-scratch. Is that why you need to pull equity? She asked into the air, which is where truth often likes to first land. It's all connected, Mark snapped. Markets dip, smart people move. Smart people pay their mortgages, Sarah murmured. Not kind. True. I closed the binder. Here's what will happen next, I said, my voice steady enough to lay track on. I will address repairs to my home on my timeline with vendors I choose. If you want to help, you can bring soup, shovel snow, or sit with me while we wait for the boiler man. What you may not do is sign for me, borrow against my roof, or gather a room to vote my rights away. I picked up the peppermints, offered the bowl to Anna first. She didn't move. Mark stared at the binder like it had committed a crime. Linda took a mint and set it on her napkin, small and white as a period. Questions? I asked the room. Not a dare, an invitation. A teenager looked up. Can I have another mint? He asked. The room cracked, a thin laugh line splitting the tension. Anna found her voice. You're painting us as villains, she said. We were trying to care for you. Care that ignores consent is control, I said. I don't need guardians. I need family. A beat, too. Then Aunt Linda stood, palms out. Okay, she said, the way a good aunt does when people forget themselves. We've heard both sides. What we're not going to do is bully or shout or sign anything today. We're going to eat something. And remember, there is a new year on the calendar, and second chances are a thing. She looked at me. I nodded. She looked at Anna, who stared at the power of attorney packet as if it might burst into flames. Mark slid his folio into his bag with a snap. In the kitchen, someone lifted the foil on a tray of baked ziti. Steam rose. People rearranged their faces into neutral. That's the thing about families. We still pass the bread, even when we're not sure who should bless it. As plates filled and forks found their way, shadows of sentences stirred. The real ones, the hard ones, waiting for quiet to land in. I could feel the next move in my bones, the final piece I hadn't placed yet. The folder labeled evidence. Audio in my tote weighed nothing and everything. I set my plate down, folded my napkin once, and looked at my daughter. Anna, I said softly, before we eat, there's one more thing we should all hear. The room quieted the way a storm does when it decides to listen. Plates hovered over laps. Forks paused midair. I set my napkin down, reached into my tote, and took out my phone. "We're going to hear a voicemail I received 2 days ago," I said, voice steady. "It's not private. He left it on my phone. It clarifies intent." Anna shook her head almost imperceptibly. Mark's jaw flexed. I hit play. Lance's voice filled Aunt Linda's living room, too loud at first, then softer when Sarah thumbed the volume down. "Hi, Margaret. This is Lance with Apex Design Build. Anna said you'd be handling payment authorizations going forward. Just calling to confirm scope and key handoff on the 2nd. We're flexible on demo, but we need access. Call me back today so we can stay on schedule." I let the silence afterward sit until everyone had heard the part that mattered. Key handoff on the 2nd. Aunt Jo, bless her pen, spoke first. "So demo was scheduled for next week," she said, not a question. Mark smiled with all his teeth. "We were being proactive." "Proactive about tearing out my kitchen without my consent," I said, mild. "On January 2nd, while my Christmas lights are still up." Anna color-spotted, 2 high flags on her cheeks. "We were moving quickly so you didn't have to stress," she said. "It's called handling things." "It's called handling things that aren't yours," Daniel said, the anger fenced in but visible. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He had facts. I looked around the room, at Linda's plastic runner, at the teenagers pretending not to care, at cousins who'd come for closure and got case law. "You asked the family to weigh in," I said. "So let's weigh truthfully. There was no emergency. There was a plan to leverage my house to plug a hole somewhere else." I tapped the notice of default in the binder. I didn't wave it. I didn't need to. Anna's eyes flashed. "You're making us small in front of everyone." I shook my head. "I'm making boundaries in front of everyone. Different thing." Mark shifted to the mantel again, as if the stone could lend him authority. "Look," he said, selling now. "This is a win-win. We upgrade a family asset. You get cash. We all celebrate holidays in a place that doesn't smell like radiator heat." Aunt Linda's radiator hissed in offended solidarity. Sarah cleared her throat from her chair near the doorway. Neutral corner, exact on purpose. "May I?" she asked. Linda nodded, grateful. Sarah didn't stand. She didn't need the height. "What you're proposing, refi, refi again, can be perfectly fine when all parties are informed and consenting," she said evenly. "What you did, book demo without the owner's consent, circulate a power of attorney with signature tabs, frame guardianship as care, isn't consent. It's coercion. Words matter." Mark's mouth opened, then closed. Anna blew out a breath that sounded like a sob she hadn't auditioned. "I have done everything alone since Dad died," she said, voice fraying. "School, jobs, bills. I'm tired too. You don't get to be the only one who's exhausted." The words were a fist I recognized, not aimed where the bruise started. I set my palm on the binder, not to guard it, but to keep myself from reaching for her. "You're right," I said softly. "You are tired. You've carried heavy things. I know because I handed you some of them by mistake and some by necessity. But taking my roof to solve your pressure doesn't lighten you. It just moves the weight onto someone who has already carried you." A murmur, not of scandal, of recognition. Aunt Jo's pen slowed. "Besides," Daniel said, gentler now, "if you're drowning, you don't borrow my life jacket and then cut it into throw pillows." Mark barked a laugh that tried for derisive and landed at nervous. "Okay, poet." "Okay, borrower," Daniel said, almost cheerful, and the room let itself smile because a joke is a handrail. I flipped one more tab. "And since we're telling the whole story," I said, "here are the texts asking me to sign the POA so we can help. The Instagram stories about big moves ahead. and the message from the contractor assuming key handoff. Dates are on top. Printed, PDF'd, and, as my friend says, polite and archival. I slid copies toward Linda, who arranged them on her coffee table like specimens under glass. Phones leaned in. Eyes did too. The evidence didn't accuse, it confirmed. Anna was very still. Then she turned, all at once, to anger. "You brought a lawyer to a family dinner," she said. "You're making me look like a thief." "I brought a binder to a meeting you called," I said. "And you're making you look like a thief." I took a breath, let it out slow. "Anna, I will not let you be the villain in my story, but I will not let you write it either." For a long second, the only sound was the clock clicking toward a minute we'd all remember differently. In that click, Anna's face did a small, precious thing. It crumpled like a child's. She swallowed it back so fast I almost doubted it, but Sarah saw it too. I could tell by the way her hand twitched on the legal pad she hadn't opened. Aunt Linda stepped into the space where next mistakes are born. "We're going to eat," she said, voice like a quilt pulled up to a trembling chin. "We are going to let the pasta do what pasta does." She looked at me. "Margaret?" "I'm finished," I said. "I've said what I needed to say." Anna stared at the peppermint bowl. She didn't take one. Mark took two and didn't eat either. We migrated to the kitchen in the clumsy ballet of big families. Elbows, trays, apologies. Someone asked me if I wanted salad. I did. Sarah touched my shoulder once, not for comfort, for calibration. "You're here. You're holding." At the counter, Anna stood with her back to the room, shoulders squared like a door. I set my plate down beside hers, not touching. "You can hate me for a while," I said quietly. "It won't change the documents." She flinched, a small movement, shoulders to ears. "Do you have to be so—" She searched for the word. "Official." "Yes," I said, "because I love you enough to not let this depend on mood." She let out a laugh that cracked. "I don't know how to come back from today." "You come back by not treating me like a stepping stone again," I said. "You come back by calling me when you're scared before you call a contractor." "And if I don't?" she asked, brittle as spun sugar. "Then you don't," I said, and felt the grief pass through my voice like a low tide. "And we love each other badly for a while until we learn better." She didn't cry. Neither did I. We stood in our parallel quiets, bowls in front of us like anchors, the chaos of relatives and ziti filling the air so we could breathe. From the dining room, Mark's voice rose, performative, explaining refinancing to Cousin Matt, as if math could save face. Daniel, bless him, asked Matt about his fantasy football league. The conversation jogged down a safer street. Aunt Linda clinked a fork against a glass. Not a toast, a reset. "Plates to the table," she called. "Let's sit." We did. We passed bread. We mumbled grace, ragged but recognizable. I tasted basil and relief and the strange sweetness that arrives when a line has finally been drawn where it always should have been. Halfway through the meal, Linda touched my wrist. "There's coffee and pie," she said. "And if you want to make a small second announcement, that would be your moment." I nodded. When the mugs had been poured and the first fork furrows dug into the pecan, I stood one more time. No binder, no props, no peppermint. "Last thing," I said. "I love my daughter. I love my son. I love the people who showed up today to witness the truth. I am not moving out. I am not signing a power of attorney, and I am not ashamed of protecting my home. I wish peace for all of us in the new year. Peace with documents, if necessary." A ripple of something like laughter, like relief, like finally. "I'll send anyone who wants them copies of the letters I've signed," I added, because I have learned what keeps mouths honest. Full plates and follow-up emails. I sat. The clock clicked. The storm shifted. Somewhere in the house, a radiator hissed approval. Coffee cooled into rings on Linda's plastic runner, while little conversations tried to act normal. You could hear the forks, the false chuckles, the way people breathe when they don't want to choose sides and know they already have. Mark worked the room the way a salesman works the last 10 minutes of a quota. Lean in, grin, you misunderstood me cadence. Cousin Matt nodded a lot and looked for exits. Anna stood at the sink pretending the water needed her more than anyone else did. Aunt Jo drifted to me, notebook closed on her palm like a Bible. "If you send me the doctor letter and the trust page," she said, quiet, "I'll make sure the cousins who missed today see them. People don't always hear, but most of us can read." "Thank you," I said. "I'll CC you." Daniel had found the teenagers and made them laugh about their boots being legal in 3 states, but not this living room. It broke a spell. Sarah collected plates, asked Linda where the good foil lived, made herself useful in the way of women who know usefulness is how you move air back into a room. At the sink, I stood beside my daughter. We watched water run. "You're angry," I said, not a question. "I'm embarrassed," she said, and a small, raw truth sat there between us like a peeled grape. "I thought everyone would understand. I thought they'd clap." "For what?" I asked. "For me being the one who handles things," she said, "for being the grown-up." "You are a grown-up," I said. "Which is why I didn't call the police when your contractor scheduled a break-in with a sledgehammer." Her mouth twitched. She didn't want to smile at the joke, and almost did. "I made it sound noble," she whispered, like a confession. "You made it look like theft." "I made it visible," I said. "That's different." Mark appeared at her shoulder with the energy of a door slamming. "We're leaving," he said. "This is a setup." "No," Sarah said mildly from the island without looking up, as if answering the oven timer. "It's a boundary." He flushed. "You're not family." "I'm the alternate," she said, tapping the healthcare proxy tab with one fingernail. "Congratulations on being neither." For a second, something like panic flashed across his face. Then he squared himself. "Fine. But you," he jabbed a finger toward me, "owe us the deposit. 2,500. We locked a crew. You blew it up." I reached into my tote, pulled out a copy of Susan's letter, and slid it across the counter. "Any disputes about unauthorized deposits should go to council," I said. "Also, stop saying we. You and Lance can settle your friendship without my roof." He snatched the paper. "We'll see you in court." "Great," Sarah said, finally looking up. "They have chairs there." Anna's eyes were wet, furious at their own weather. "Mark," she said, low, warning, but he was already walking toward the door, performing his exit for the people who would later say, "He made some points." He opened his mouth one more time, but Aunt Linda stepped between him and the room, with a casserole dish like a shield. "Take a plate," she said in her best host voice. "Nobody leaves my house without food." He took a plate because even emperors obey certain ants. When the door closed behind them, the living room did what living rooms do. Exhaled, rearranged, pretended it had only ever been a place for couches. Linda pressed a foil-wrapped loaf into my hands. "Take the good bread," she said. "You'll need toast tomorrow." On the ride home, the sky was the color of pencil lead. Daniel drove the slow way, letting the neighborhood's inflatable reindeer nod at us like we'd done the brave thing. My phone buzzed twice, once with a group text, "Love you, Aunt M here if you need anything," and once with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then played it on speaker. "Ms. Wilson, this is Lance at Apex. Given the legal notice from your attorney, we're closing our file. The deposit remains non-refundable per contract with... He coughed. The party who paid it. Please disregard prior scheduling. Happy holidays. Polite and archival, Sarah said. Bless his litigious little heart. Home. Shoes by the mat, radiator waking with a click. I hung my coat and went straight to the dining room, laid the binder on the table like a trophy no one would dust. Daniel put on water for tea without asking. Sarah took down the peppermint bowl, set 3 mints between us like witnesses who'd seen enough. What now? Daniel asked. Now we do nothing big, I said. The relief in my bones surprised me. How the right kind of action makes space for rest. We let paper do work. We answer nothing without thinking. We eat the good bread. At 9:11 p.m., Anna texted. I'm sorry about today. I'm not ready to say more. I won't come by without asking. I won't sign your name to anything. I'm mad at you. I know that's not fair. I'm trying. I typed, erased, tried again. Then I sent the truest small thing I could manage. Thank you for saying that. I love you. Boundaries, stay. 3 dots. Then nothing. It was enough. I brushed crumbs from the table into my palm and thought about the ledger in the cedar chest. The letters in Sarah's trunk. The way Peter used to say, measure twice, cut once, about wood, and apparently about holiday meetings. The house clicked its approval. Radiator, lock, the small language of a place deciding it was still yours. Before bed, I added 2 lines to my log. 12:26, family meeting, binder presented. Anna acknowledged boundary. Mark threatened court. Voicemail from contractor closing file. Feeling steady. I capped the pen, slid the binder into the drawer with the warranties, and turned out the light. The quiet that found us wasn't triumphant. It was grown up. It was the kind that comes after you do the next right thing and then stop. Tomorrow would bring aftermath. Calls, opinions, maybe an apology that didn't yet know its own name. But tonight the story had turned, and the turn held. Morning carried itself in softly, like a guest who knew where the coffee filters were. I woke before the alarm. Not from worry, but from the strange quiet that shows up after a storm obeys a fence. I made toast with the good bread Linda forced on me, and wrote the date at the top of my log. 12:27, aftermath. Under it, a line I didn't expect to write. Slept. By 8, the group thread started humming. Cousin Matt, proud of you. Aunt M boiler guy recommendation if you want it. Aunt Joe. Minutes from yesterday attached. Corrections welcome. She had bulleted everyone's words as if the living room had been a city council meeting. She italicized polite and archival like a motto. Linda sent a photo of the mint bowl with 3 candies left and typed, for the record. I screenshotted all of it and filed the images in Do2 Communications, family thread. Not because I needed proof, because paper makes brains behave. At 10, Susan called. 2 quick updates, she said. 1, the contractor emailed to confirm closure of their file. I replied that any further contact should be directed to me. 2, Mark's "We'll see you in court" would require a cause of action. There isn't one. If he files something frivolous, we'll address it, and we'll ask for fees. Thank you, I said. I made French toast. I can't fax that to you, but know that it exists. She laughed. I'll bill you for it. An hour later, my phone lit with Anna's name. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Hi, honey. I'm coming over, she said, voice sanded down. I texted. You didn't answer. I put my phone down to do dishes. I said, thank you for telling me you're coming. The locks will cooperate. She arrived with bare face, hair in the kind of messy bun you make when hands feel useless. No mark. She stepped inside and waited until I closed the door before she spoke. I unfollowed the contractor, she blurted, as if the app might overhear. And I told him not to contact me again. Good, I said. She stood in the entry like she was at a museum, unsure where to put her hands. I feel like everybody hates me. Everybody saw you, I said. Seeing and hating aren't the same. She swallowed. Cousin Matt texted me a link to a budget spreadsheet with emojis. I wanted applause, and I got homework. Homework saves lives, I said gently. Ask any nurse. We sat at the table without the binder between us. She watched me butter toast like I was performing a magic trick. I'm not going to ask you for money, she said, words marching. I know better, but can you tell me what to do? Relief is a peculiar thing. It floods and steadies in the same breath. I can tell you what I would do if I were you, I said. I would call the condo lender and ask for a hardship repayment plan. I would call a credit counselor that isn't selling me something. I would make a list of monthly musts and cut the noise. And I would not let pride be more expensive than interest. She nodded like a student who finally hears a verb. Mark says refinancing would solve it. Refinancing solves what you've already paid for? I said. Cutting solves what you haven't. I slid a legal pad toward her. Write down the actual numbers, not what you think they could be if the universe behaves. Numbers that would insult the mood board? She gave me the smallest smile. You and your moods. Me and my math, I said. We worked quietly for a while. She wrote, I washed a bowl that was already clean. Do you hate him? She asked suddenly, not looking up. No, I said. I don't hand that much of myself to someone who doesn't know where to put it. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. I don't know if we make it, she said in a voice so thin a draft could have carried it away. He thinks I betrayed him yesterday. He says family should move as one. I folded a towel. Moving as one is for marching bands and geese. Families move like crowds, messy, with pockets of grace. Her eyes filled and didn't spill. Would you be disappointed if I left? She whispered. I would be disappointed if you stayed for pride, I said. I would be proud if you stayed for love you can name. Either way, my door works. She nodded and looked at her list again, the way people stare at a map before they admit where they are. I'm going to figure this out without your house, she said with a steadiness that didn't try to pretend it was strength. I promise. Make the promise to yourself, I said. Then keep it where you can see it. She tucked the legal pad into her tote, stood, then half sat again like a bird testing a branch. Mom? Yes. I'm not ready to say it, she said, voice thick. But I heard you? That's enough for today, I said, and it was. After she left, the house sighed in that soft way old wood does when a temperature changes. Daniel came in from the porch, hands cold, cheeks bright. How'd it go? She wrote numbers, I said. Her hand shook, and then it didn't. Progress, he said, like a man nodding at a straight fence post. By afternoon, the ripple effects found us. Linda texted that she'd told a cousin to stop using the word crazy like salt. Aunt Jo emailed her minutes with one line amended. Care that ignores consent is control. She credited Sarah, who responded with a heart and the words, put it on a tea towel. The teenagers sent a photo of their boots lined up neatly under Linda's bench with a caption, legal in this living room now. The jokes were small ladders. We climbed them back toward each other. Not everyone followed. Mark posted a black square with loyalty in white letters and a caption about snakes in the grass. He did not tag me because in America, even passive aggression respects the algorithm. I took a screenshot and filed it. 02 Communications Social does not judge. it preserves. That evening, I did a quiet audit of the house. Not for valuables, for vulnerabilities. I moved the spare key from the obvious flower pot to the less obvious duct-taped underside of the porch light. I labeled the breaker switches with fresh tape, Daniel's handwriting, so if we ever needed a plumber at 2 a.m., we could find the right lever without cursing. I laid the binder back in the drawer with the warranties. It looked oddly at home among manuals for appliances that promise the world if you clean their filters. I put the peppermints in a jar and wrote "meeting candy" on a label because I am still myself. As I tidied, I found the shoebox of letters again and took out one I hadn't opened in years. Peter's handwriting on cheap hotel stationery from a conference right after we moved in. "The radiator sings like a cricket," he'd written. "The walls hold heat like a hug. Don't sell this house to anyone who says ROI in a normal sentence." I cried in the kind of way you can wipe with the heel of your hand and keep going. Before bed, I added to the log. Anna came alone. Asked for what to do instead of what to sign. Began a plan. Family thread, jokes, minutes, a tea towel quote. Mark posted a loyalty square. Saved, no reply. Feeling cautious hope. I capped the pen and turned off the kitchen light. The hallway framed our history in small rectangles of glass. "We're okay," I told them, not a promise, a measurement. The radiator answered with 2 quiet ticks, the house's version of copy that. In bed, I pictured the days ahead not like a courtroom montage, but like chores, calls, budgets, dinners eaten at a table that belonged to me because I kept choosing it. Peace doesn't show up with trumpets. It pads in on stocking feet and asks if you want tea. Tomorrow, I'd make a plumber appointment, then maybe bake. I'd text Anna a list of credit counseling agencies and no advice disguised as control. I'd ask Daniel to help me bring the boxes down from the attic so I could rotate what I kept and what I gifted. Work, not war. Somewhere past midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I didn't know. "Ms. Wilson, I'm the loan officer for the Riverton property. Ms. Miller gave me your number. We'd like to discuss a forbearance." I stared at the ceiling and felt irritation flare, then fade. "Please work directly with Ms. Miller," I typed back. "I'm not an owner of that property and can't discuss it. Thank you. Polite and archival." Then I slid the phone into the nightstand and let sleep find what it could of me. The storm had passed. Not out to sea, not forever. But it had learned my boundary line and, at least for today, stayed on its side. Winter loosened its jaw. By March, the snow had melted into skinny gray islands along the curb. I fixed the porch light, scheduled the plumber for a real, not emergency visit, and paid a roofer to replace shingles that had been flapping like loose thoughts. The house looked back at me, quieter, like a friend whose fever finally broke. In April, I met a real estate agent, not because I had to, because I wanted to decide my own verbs while I still had my own nouns. We sat at the oak table with coffee and the binder between us like a third opinion. "I'm not selling to a flip," I said. "I'm selling to a family. I want noise in these rooms after I'm gone." She didn't flinch. "Then we'll write the listing that way," she said. "We'll ask for letters." Letters came. Some read like resumes with a mortgage attached. One was a paragraph of emoji, but one, written in careful sentences on lined paper, started, "We have a toddler who laughs at radiators." The photo showed a boy in dinosaur pajamas pressing his ear to a heater like it was a seashell. The parents were teachers. Their budget would not break records. Their offer came with 2 lines that unclenched something in me. "We won't tear out the wainscoting. We will learn the house's noises." We accepted. I signed papers that tasted like metal and agency. The trust made the transfer easy, clean. No one breathed down my neck. No one said ROI like a prayer. The agent cried. which surprised us both. "My grandmother sold her house too late," she said. "You're doing it right." I thanked her and put the compliment in a pocket I could reach. Before closing, I did a slow lap of every room with my phone and a rag. I wiped the trim, the tops of door frames, the bulb on the hall light. In the kitchen, I labeled the breaker that never made sense. In the basement, I left a note on the water shutoff valve. Quarter turn, clockwise. Don't force. On the inside of the pantry door, I taped a recipe card for French toast. Peter's handwriting at the bottom, extra vanilla, would stay with the house. The oak table would not. Daniel and I loosened its legs, wrapped it like a sleeping animal, and slid it into the truck. Some things go with you, some things don't. Deciding which is the work, I wrote 3 letters. One to the young family. "Welcome, here's the name of the boiler guy. Here's what the backyard looks like when the lilac blooms." One to Daniel. "Thank you, not for heft, but for humor, for the way you make radiators sound like friends." And one to Anna. I waited until the house was empty but not echoing, until my own grief had a chair to sit in. "Anna," I wrote, and paused. The rest came like steady rain. "I forgive you, not because a ledger balanced or a lesson sunk in, but because I don't want to pack what you did into the next place. Forgiveness is not a key to my accounts. It is not permission to plan around my roof. It is my decision to travel lighter. You and I will learn each other again, this time with paperwork, and please, when you are scared, call me before you call a contractor. When you want advice, ask for it. When you want money, say so plainly and expect me to say no without anger. I love you. Boundaries stay." Mom, I sealed it and slid it into the tote I'd carry out last. Moving day was not tragic. It was work. Sarah made checklists and sandwiches. Daniel carried boxes labeled in my tidy block letters. The house watched us go with its usual noises, clanks, groans, the affectionate complaining of old wood. When the truck door thumped shut, I stood on the porch for one full inhale, one full exhale, and touched the frame the way you touch a loved face, not to possess it, but to memorize its lines. Then I locked the door and put the key on the sill, where the new family would find it beside a peppermint in clear wrap. The apartment was 3 floors up with stubborn stairs and good light. The view was the kind city insists on giving you if you're polite. Rooftops, a sliver of river, a tree that would be green on the right day. The radiator sang in a different pitch. I liked it. The oak table fit by the window as if it had been cut for that corner in a previous life. The binder slid into a drawer beside a rubber band ball and a takeout menu. It looked right-sized there. I kept my routines, tea at 4, a walk if the sidewalk cooperated. The log remained, though I wrote less in it. Sometimes you record so you can stop remembering on purpose. I joined a Tuesday night knitting group that talked more about baseball than knitting. I learned the names of the doorman and the woman with the dog who hated hats. I bought a small plant and did not kill it. Spring turned itself into something greener. On a Saturday morning, Anna knocked with both hands full, one holding grocery bags, the other bracing a cardboard box. She stood at my door the way good guests do, with hope and pause. "I brought things for your pantry," she said, lifting pasta like a bouquet. "And the box is my budget. You asked me to make one. I didn't catch all the decimals, but I caught myself." We did not hug like a movie. We put the pasta on a shelf and the box on the table. Then we sat. She spread the papers like a map. "We sold the condo," she said, not hiding the ache. "We didn't make anything. We didn't lose the last 3 months either. We're okay." "I'm sorry," I said. 2 words that can do honest work when you don't attach advice to them. She traced a column with her finger. I can pay down the card in 6 months if I stop acting like my feelings are hungry. She smiled without asking me to join. Mark and I are figuring out whether we like each other without a project. We might. We might not. You don't have to know today, I said. I like that sentence, she said. I will borrow it without interest. When she left, she took a peppermint from the jar and put a second in my palm. For the road, she said, then laughed at the absurdity of a 5-minute road. After the door clicked shut, I added a single line to the log. We made a plan, and it didn't include my house. Summer crept in at the edges. I visited the old street once, on a walk that looked like wandering and felt like a ritual. The new family had chalk drawings on the sidewalk, abstracts in bright dust, a dinosaur with too many teeth, a hopscotch grid that forgot a number and didn't care. Through the open window, I heard the laugh of a toddler and the stainless steel cadence of a pot being put away. The wainscoting remained. The radiator, bless it, hissed in a key I recognized. I did not knock. I did not cry. I smiled because somewhere between doors and documents, a promise had kept. On a September afternoon, Sarah and I sat at my table with lemon bars and a list. What would you tell the you from last December? She asked, purely to make the air interesting. That homes are tools, not altars, I said, cutting squares. That love without consent is just management. That paperwork is not a betrayal. It's a seatbelt. That a peppermint bowl and a sentence you practiced in the mirror can hold a whole meeting together. And that you make a mean French toast, she added. And that, I said. We clinked forks. The radiator approved. In the mail that week, a postcard, a beach, a hand-drawn dinosaur in the corner. We love the wainscoting. Thank you for the French toast recipe, signed in block letters by parents and a squiggle by a boy who, according to a postscript, still believed radiators were musical instruments. I put the card on my fridge with a magnet shaped like a pear. Not evidence. Proof of something gentler. On a cool evening, I took out the last letter I hadn't mailed. The first draft I'd written months ago in the old apartment, full of sharp lines I thought would steady me. I read it once and tore it in half. It had belonged to a different chapter. I replaced it with a photocopy of the one I'd sent. Shorter, kinder, still firm. Forgiveness is mine to give. My roof is mine to keep. The sentence had done its job. So had I. People talk about closure like it's a door. Maybe it's a drawer. You put the binder away and know you can take it out if you need it. But today you don't. You make tea. You answer texts. You do the next right chore. You let the small life be the good life. That night, I slept with the window cracked. The city made its soft, honest noises. Somewhere a radiator sang in a key that matched mine. I dreamed of a house that wasn't a test, and a family that learned to say please and no with the same mouth. Morning would come like it always does, steadily, whether you deserve it or not. I would make French toast. I would eat at the table that had followed me through every version of myself. And if the phone rang, I would answer it, or I wouldn't. Either way, I would be fine. Not at war. Not even at work, for once. Just home.